Blood-chilling silence hangs over this discovery. We just hit another pile of female garments. A collared top lies abandoned. Right behind a specific Tucson residence lies a dusty gulch. Locals dub these dry beds washes. Over the last 58 agonizing days, this exact slice of desert terrain has transformed into ground zero for a vanishing act that completely paralyzed the entire nation. Detectives never flag this arid trench as a crucial spot. Forget about press conferences actively guiding our eyes toward this dusty ravine. Instead, an independent guy armed with video gear simply marched into the dirt, recording his shocking discoveries, forcing everyone to look. This precise gully borders Annie Guthrie's backyard. She is the exact individual who called in Nancy's disappearance early on February 1st. Her property remains the focal point of a 58-day probe lacking any named culprits. Detectives lack a proven incident location, leaving her loved ones and a captivated public begging for closure since that fateful winter dawn. What happened to Nancy then on March 28th, 2026, 56 days deep? A persistent vlogger trekking through the dusty ravine struck gold. Several garments were resting right inside the exact same waterless creek bed where cops previously collected discarded trousers. Local authorities received the alert immediately. Officers know the facts. Every single detail was recorded carefully. Images are now circulating across the internet. How did law enforcement handle the scene? Could these discarded pieces trace the victim's final footsteps in the dark? And does discovering them practically inside Annie's backyard shatter every single hypothesis we've constructed about this mystery? We are diving deep into that exact angle today. My years in this game taught me one hard truth. Trivial clues usually blow the lid off the entire case. An arid gulch, an abandoned coat, dusty jeans, plus a relentless citizen sleuth, refusing to ignore a patch of dirt he already swept once before. Every little scrap holds massive weight, holding secrets to this specific puzzle that local authorities simply refuse to openly clarify for the anxious public just yet. Keep paying attention here. Exactly who runs? Exploring with Jim, before breaking down the evidence, let's analyze the man behind the lens. He definitely isn't some clueless amateur wandering aimlessly. This channel features a dedicated solo investigator, meticulously sweeping various zones across the broader Tucson region ever since the news exploded during early February. The guy isn't a cop. No shiny shields here. His presence holds zero authorized status within the hunt, lacking government funding or fancy lab gear. Instead, he relies on video gear, sturdy footwear, and a relentless drive to execute the gritty fieldwork that the actual police squads keep neglecting. Plunging deep into the harsh environment, marching through miles of brush, and refusing to quit until secrets surface. Sectional sweeping works exactly as the name implies. Searchers map out specific squares, they hike through every single block, they record absolutely everything they spot. Then they repeat the process again. Keep checking the perimeter. Never ever trick yourself into believing an empty first sweep guarantees a permanently clean zone. Heavy breezes constantly shift debris. Heavy storms completely relocate buried objects. Overgrown weeds easily conceal crucial artifacts missed during earlier expeditions. Meanwhile, inside an arid canyon constantly remodeled by brutal flash floods, a clue hidden securely 3 weeks prior might sit in plain sight right now. Our relentless vlogger grasps this concept perfectly, prompting his return trip. Moreover, this wasn't his initial major breakthrough regarding this terrifying mystery. Those abandoned trousers, pulled from this identical gully bordering Annie Guthrie's property, only surfaced because of intense, methodical sweeps through the rugged neighborhood perimeter. People immediately noticed the breakthrough. The guy filmed the scene thoroughly. Authorities collected the evidence directly from him. We are talking about feminine slacks. Honestly, stumbling across potential clues while trekking through the wilderness forces a person to make incredibly tough, high-stakes calls on the fly. Catch my drift? Fast forward to March 28th, and our guy returns to the familiar ravine, sweeping the identical zone. But today he unearths another massive score. He discovered several different apparel pieces. We aren't talking about a lone sock, but a cluster of garments dumped right beside his previous strike zone. The moment internet sleuths watched him trudge back into that specific gully, the digital frenzy ignited instantaneously. Anyone actively following the original trouser revelation immediately grasped the sinister implications of spotting a fresh stash inside the exact same dried riverbed. From a detective's perspective, discovering an isolated object might just be random luck. Unearthing a concentrated pile of evidence screams foul play immediately, which perfectly describes the treasure trove currently bleeding out of the ditch bordering Annie Guthrie's yard. The vlogger's quiet determination, and his stubbornness, his endless lapse. His obsessive filming habits showcase the precise willpower, elevating everyday amateur sleuths far beyond the realm of simple couch detectives during this nightmare. The guy grinds through the mud daily. He consistently unearths critical clues while dialing up local deputies the second a discovery dictates intervention. We seriously need to address the civilian search teams involved with this mystery because their impact is genuinely massive. Mainstream journalists and police chiefs regularly love dismissing crowdsourced detectives as reckless rookies, guilty of trampling delicate forensic sites, peddling wild conspiracies, or generally obstructing the pursuit of true justice. Sure, that worry makes sense on paper. However, the reality of this specific hunt completely shatters that narrative. The actual facts validate our vlogger. The timeline backs the public. Real evidence champions those brave locals hiking the desolate gullies, while uniformed bosses were busy staging PR stunts and battling their own crumbling public images. By contrast, our YouTuber handed detectives two distinct victories, meticulously mapped discoveries, perfectly captured on film, right where they lay, long before dialing 911. He surrendered everything via proper legal protocols, creating a digital paper trail no bureaucrat could possibly sweep under the rug later. That level of forensic care from an average citizen demands immense respect. Now, regarding the landscape, we absolutely must analyze this specific canyon's layout, because terrain is everything here. Location is the beating heart of this mystery. The nature of these clues, their dark implications, and the police department's questionable reactions, all of it traces back to the dirt. Therefore, mapping out the wild topography is mandatory right now. That dusty trench snaking past Annie Guthrie's fence cuts straight across a suburban Tucson neighborhood patrolled by Pima County deputies. For anyone oblivious to the harsh Sonoran climate or southwestern landscapes, these gullies basically serve as massive naturally carved water routes known as arroyos. They sit bone dry for months occasionally, remaining completely parched for years until violent summer monsoons trigger terrifying fast-moving tidal waves. These deep geological scars carve aggressively through the arid wasteland and weave directly into local subdivisions. These hidden veins bypass streets entirely, weaving through the very foundation of Tucson's urban layout. They pulse beneath the city's surface in ways pavement simply cannot. Residents often ignore these gullies bordering their properties for decades at a time. They serve as wild breaches in property barriers, stubborn pockets where raw wilderness forcefully asserts dominance, right amid the suburban sprawl. Scouring these areas proves exceptionally brutal for search teams. Tucson's ravines typically choke on dense thickets of brittlebush dead cacti, Palo Verde trees, and thick creosote brush. Navigating the jagged, unpredictable terrain is truly treacherous work. Gully floors might plunge 12 feet beneath street level, or level out completely, right before squeezing into completely unpredictable bottlenecks under concrete highway overpasses. When monsoon season unleashes heavy rains, these trenches transform into violent rivers, pulling everything down. Trash plant matter. Literally, whatever sat waiting near the edges gets swept away completely. Flash floods easily hurl heavy objects 50 yards downriver. Items might vanish beneath 6 inches of mud instantly. Conversely, the rushing water could strand crucial evidence right out in the open, remaining entirely unnoticed until organized rescue teams sweep the territory. We must focus intensely on the ravine backing Annie Guthrie's property for a single, absolutely critical motive. That ditch offers a completely stealthy escape path straight out of the neighborhood without ever touching a single street, bypassing vehicles that would instantly trigger a neighbor's security lenses, avoiding concrete tracks entirely and eliminating the risk of automated scanners clocking a getaway vehicle, totally dodging any watchful neighbors glancing outside late at night, letting a suspect slip unnoticed from the backyard through heavy brush and jagged rocks directly into a massive hidden trench network that snakes far away from the residents and merges into the greater wilderness. Such a pathway completely evades all modern digital tracking eyes. Considering the core puzzle remains exactly how an elderly woman like Nancy Guthrie vanished into thin air without drawing attention, this geographical loophole changes everything completely. Detectives possessed full knowledge of this specific trench right from the case's inception. Finding those trousers earlier definitely wasn't the initial moment locals or cops were urged to scour this exact waterway. Folks argued over this spot for weeks on end. Come March 28th, it practically screamed for scrutiny once more. First the trousers, and currently a coat. Check out this extra detail, folks. Seriously. It almost slipped by me entirely. Catch those weird stains, I swear, buddy, that genuinely screams blood splatter. 4 sets of bottoms, various garments identically situated, ditch. This terrain isn't coincidental whatsoever. The landscape is literally screaming clues. Furthermore, a crucial reality constantly vanishes when folks simply theorize about this gully from afar. We're discussing treacherous ground that the vast majority of armchair sleuths haven't bothered stepping foot inside. Glancing at drone maps feels entirely detached from actual boots on the ground. Still images completely fail to capture the trench's sheer drops or truly convey the towering weeds choking the borders, how noises warp and vanish under the moonlight, or how the dirt greedily consumes dropped objects without a trace. Yet Jim actually hiked through it all. And he understands perfectly well that his March 28th discoveries hardly arrived at that spot by mere chance. Reaching that exact placement demands highly purposeful effort, meaning their current resting spot paints an incredibly revealing picture of their exact initial origin point. The dirt never deceives. Nature holds zero bias. It merely guards secrets, patiently awaiting discovery. So what actually surfaced on March 28th, 2026? Allow me to outline the hard facts methodically, since accuracy is paramount when wild rumors outpace verified journalism every single day. Every single detail moving forward stems straight from a verifiable post on the platform X published March 28th, 2026 via the handle at Hope is Faith24. That specific update responded directly to a sleuth's thread while intentionally alerting the account at Nancy Grace. Images attached to that very message provide the entire foundation for my next statements. During March 28th, 2026, marking day 56. Tracking. Nancy Guthrie. The team investigating alongside Jim marched back into the gully bordering Annie's property, stumbling upon numerous discarded garments. Judging by the visual evidence shared online, the haul seemingly features some shadowy outerwear alongside slacks. Several articles surfaced within the exact same trench network that previously yielded that first pair of trousers. Captured snapshots display the apparel resting against the muddy floor, completely untouched from their original resting state. Nobody shifted them prior to snapping the lens. Jim preserved the scene perfectly. Maintaining that strict standard represents the ultimate rulebook for civilians stumbling across clues during an open manhunt. Touching the findings is strictly forbidden. Adjusting angles for aesthetics destroys cases entirely. Snap the frame precisely how nature left it, preserve the raw positioning, and immediately dial the cops. Jim followed those rules flawlessly upon spotting the stash. He quickly flagged down the Pima County Sheriff's crew. Online receipts verify his swift action perfectly. Officers definitively got the memo. Let's carefully define the rigid boundary right now regarding verified facts versus pure speculation, since maintaining rock-solid integrity remains our channel's ultimate, unshakable priority across every single true crime broadcast. So what remains undeniable? The clothes actually surfaced. Camera lenses captured the raw proof instantly. Pictures clearly highlight several wearable pieces dumped in the ravine. Annie Guthrie's residence sits directly adjacent. Local authorities received the tip. The unproven territory. Whether these garments link back to Nancy herself or tie into the horrific timeline of February 1st, 2026. Zero official bonds exist right now from county, cops, federal agents, or any lab tech examining the scene. Forging a legitimate link demands bagging the evidence properly, running deep scientific diagnostics, extracting complex genetic profiles, or thread matches culminating in a badge-carrying official signing off. Currently, we lack all of those critical steps. Our arsenal boasts a grid coordinate snapshots and a verified police dispatch call. That alone screams for heavy scrutiny, yet it hardly writes the final chapter. Leaping to baseless verdicts simply isn't how we operate here. We are staring down a map, a haunting trend, and a blazing mystery that local deputies desperately need to solve immediately. Considering the absolutely baffling track record this precinct displays while managing this hunt up until today, trusting them to handle this burden perfectly without massive public pressure feels incredibly foolish on our part. The internet sleuths absolutely crushed this, treating the discovery with a speed and intensity that literally became the headline itself. Mere hours after Hope is Faith 24 dropped that update, the chat exploded with hardcore analysis. Users immediately extracted blueprints to measure gaps between the previous trousers and the March 28th discovery, hunting for visual clues in the snapshots. They aligned the terrain data perfectly against every working theory regarding the suspect's escape routes. Trust me, nobody was just guessing blindly here. We are witnessing textbook detective work from dedicated citizens who have breathed this mystery for almost 2 whole months. What the amateur sleuths produced easily outshines the bare minimum details the police department actually released. That glaring silence remains a massive failure completely on the shoulders of the local sheriff, just like always. Let us examine the drainage ditch anomalies. Pay close attention, because this specific trend is exactly what the authorities are sweating over, and it should absolutely give you chills. The repeating sequence. That specific ravine bordering Annie Guthrie's backyard just surrendered several crucial artifacts linked to our mystery. First came the old trousers, and suddenly on March 28th, searchers uncovered extra garments resembling a coat alongside another set of trousers, a literal stockpile. They appeared inside the exact same trench on totally separate days. Whenever someone vanishes without a corpse left behind, finding grouped clues clustered inside a specific zone becomes the ultimate holy grail for detectives. That is the exact method for tracking pathways and constructing chronological events. You separate the crucial hotspots from useless distractions by using exactly this technique. Discovering several artifacts stacked together simply destroys the coincidence argument. Anyone could write off one lonely shirt trapped in the brush. The wind dragged it over, a hiker tossed it, or it simply lacks relevance. But brushing it off becomes impossible once you uncover 2 distinct batches dropped on totally different days inside that exact same boundary. We must collectively figure out if this marks a lucky accident or an actual escape route. Let me break down the standard blueprint veteran federal agents apply to these scenarios. Snagging a clue from the dirt requires studying way more than just the fabric itself. You dissect the environment, completely wondering who dropped this junk. Which exact trajectory carried this specific object down into this muddy pit? Can the landscape itself reveal the primary highway, linking the starting block straight to the final resting spot? Gravity essentially forces any debris dumped from a nearby estate to travel straight down the sandy slopes along the natural waterway. Spotting a bunch of artifacts tangled together naturally begs the ultimate question: did absolutely everything originate from one single address? Does that specific starting line match the residence, draining straight into our ravine? Nobody's pointing fingers just yet. These remain strictly procedural inquiries. We need lab geeks and boots on the ground to solve this, provided the Puma County authorities actually decide to take these clues seriously for once. Criminals absolutely love using drainage ditches as dumping grounds. Whenever they must ditch dirty materials fast, while dodging neighborhood watchdogs, you can slip right in from a backyard under total darkness. The loose dirt completely swallows tracks, while the lack of lamps hides your shadow entirely. Security feeds rarely monitor the overgrown brush tumbling past the property line into the gulch. Think about a suspect requiring a stealthy disposal run. Utilizing the dark ravine directly behind a suburban desert home provides a terrifyingly perfect opportunity for them. Do not take that as gospel, but rather as a proven criminal habit tracked by veteran profilers working identical environments previously. Nobody claims to know the exact events in that trench. However, the physical layout demands a deeper dive, and the sheer volume of recovered junk makes ignoring the obvious nearly impossible now. Let us tackle a massive elephant in the room that sleuths always bring up regarding recovered items: the threat of compromised crime scenes. Critics constantly wonder if those rags sat rotting out there for decades without any connection to our victim. What if a random drifter left them behind? Sure, that completely valid alternative exists anytime you hunt for clues in the raw wilderness. But that is the literal reason we invented crime labs. Scientists swab the gear searching for loose threads, genetic markers, or blood that definitively anchors the object to our suspect or the fatal evening. Microscopes ultimately establish guilt far better than just finding things laying near each other. However, geographic closeness provides our most crucial asset, a starting grid. Pulling several random garments from a ditch bordering the exact house we are currently investigating instantly makes that zone a top priority for scientists, regardless of how the local skeptics spin it. Lab technicians will eventually slice through those wild theories to deliver the absolute truth. The repeating evidence basically screams at us to keep digging. And regarding the authorities, the local sheriff's office finally got the memo. That statement shoulders an insane amount of heavy lifting right now, so let me ensure we grasp the actual grim reality behind it, considering the department's completely abysmal track record with our mystery. Grab a seat, because the historical context here seriously changes absolutely everything. The top brass, Chris Nanos, just caught a brutal vote of no confidence straight from his own deputies. We are talking internal mutiny, not public backlash. His own badges and civilian staff legally documented their complete lack of faith in his command abilities. You simply cannot brush off a mutiny like that. Such a massive structural collapse perfectly explains the botched handling of our current puzzle. Take the former second-in-command, Rick Castigar, a guy deeply entrenched in their internal operations. He understands their protocol and limits flawlessly, and he actually went on camera to blast the sloppy detective work happening right now. The man brought receipts. His words carried total transparency and undeniable weight. Then there is Dr. Richard Carmona, the legend who ran the department before the current regime took over, bringing the absolute god-tier reputation of serving as the nation's chief medical officer previously. He openly declared the primary search grid completely ruined forever. We are not talking about minor smudges or salvageable errors. He meant entirely and hopelessly destroyed. Hearing such brutal honesty from a medical titan stings deeply, especially since the current local authorities stubbornly refuse to properly acknowledge or fix the disaster. Let's be brutally honest here, knowing the local authorities got a call means absolutely nothing when their track record is already defined by massive documented systemic failures. Frankly, hearing they are aware brings zero comfort. We doubt the process because history merely repeats itself. Locals keep digging up solid clues, handing over vital tips, and just sitting around waiting for action. Meanwhile, the official explanation regarding how those leads were handled remains shockingly inadequate at best. Therefore, the moment Jim discovered those objects and alerted authorities, incredibly pressing questions immediately surfaced. Did any officers actually show up? Did they hike out to personally inspect the terrain? Did anyone grab those items? Were those materials properly secured, tagged, and officially logged? Did police take their own pictures of the location? Are they linking these objects to the trousers previously spotted nearby? Recognizing this clear cluster as a crucial pattern. Have they looped in the federal agents already working this mystery? Nobody has given us solid answers yet, which creates a massive issue, since citizens absolutely deserve complete transparency regarding how police handle crowdsourced clues during an active search for someone. The stakes couldn't be higher right now. Should investigators grab this gear, run proper lab tests, and successfully link it all back to Nancy Guthrie, everything completely shifts. Following 58 agonizing days without a definitive focal point or even a reliable chain of events, alongside 0 named individuals of interest, establishing a scientific link between these objects and the vanished woman would alter the entire trajectory. Even if experts test the gear and prove it has 0 relation to her disappearance, successfully eliminating a false theory still provides tremendous value. Detectives must aggressively chase down and resolve clues rather than letting them sit entirely ignored out in the wilderness. However, should deputies ignore the alert entirely and blow off the sheer gravity of uncovering a second massive evidence cluster in that exact spot, that terrible failure becomes a massive scandal our citizens simply will not stay quiet about. I also need to bluntly call out a very particular, deeply flawed bureaucratic pattern unfolding right in front of us. Puma County authorities never willingly share details regarding those trousers previously spotted out in the brush. Ordinary citizens expose that truth. Officials utterly failed to warn locals that the specific terrain sitting directly behind Annie's property had become a major geographic hotspot for their search efforts. Locals figured that out independently, especially after digging up yet another verified clue in that exact same spot. Once again, everyday people are driving the narrative forward, leaving the police scrambling to react to civilian discoveries instead of taking charge with their own professional intel. This vicious cycle, citizens uncovering clues, inadequate police reactions, terrible transparency, and locals pressing onward, has completely defined the initial 58 days of searching. That frustrating reality provides the essential filter needed to properly interpret any claims about authorities being alerted to new developments. February 1st holds the core mystery. We must rewind directly to the exact night Nancy vanished. Simply because that dark evening on February 1st, 2026 remains the absolute epicenter of this entire chaotic ordeal. Moreover, that rugged terrain just behind Annie Guthrie's residence is dragging our attention back there with undeniable magnetic force. 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie vanished without a trace from her residence early on the morning of February 1st. That frantic initial dispatch, which effectively kicked off this whole search, sparked a massive domino effect that 58 days later still leaves us desperately trying to piece together the events right before she vanished. What truly unfolded during those dark midnight hours, her actual whereabouts, and if she wandered off willingly or was forced out, if she even exited the property, or perhaps the real tragedy occurred far closer to her residence than officials ever admitted. None of these are crazy conspiracies. They represent the absolute bedrock queries of the manhunt, and this growing pile of clues behind Annie's place aggressively forces us to revisit them. Regarding that fateful evening, absolutely 0 security cameras caught her slipping away. Not a single doorbell lens recorded her strolling along the pavement or driveways. 0 neighboring devices tracked her entering the road. No verified automobile ever showed up to carry her off into the darkness. Lacking any obvious escape path for an 84-year-old victim remains the most baffling enigma here, mainly since humans absolutely cannot just evaporate from a locked residence without dropping some sort of exit clue behind. That is, unless she traveled a hidden corridor completely devoid of electronic eyes. Slipping past a backyard, trailing along an old boundary fence, or navigating a rugged ditch cutting right through the neighborhood, completely lacking street lamps, lenses, and hard asphalt that normally captures distinct shoe prints. Moving under the cover of night while knowing the layout, utilizing that brushy trench behind the home, creates an escape trail that basically vanishes from the records instantly. Analytically speaking, the rugged ditch behind Annie Guthrie's property acts as a massive tactical blind spot. It represents a shadow path completely untouched by any digital lenses. It serves as a natural tunnel where investigative focus is suddenly shifting once again. This spot has transitioned from a weird coincidence straight into a glaring behavioral pattern. Former federal agent Steve Moore publicly analyzed this exact mystery, noting how seasoned pros tackle similar bodiless disappearances by carefully reverse engineering discarded physical clues in order to properly map out a realistic escape trajectory. Detectives locate an object, question its placement, and logically walk the most likely trail in reverse, starting at the drop site and ending back at ground zero. They analyze the landscape, weather, and time frame to reconstruct the event. Now, the gulch behind Annie's place hands authorities 2 distinct map coordinates for that reverse engineering strategy. First, those previously discovered trousers, followed by a March 28th unearthing of a coat and more pants, multiple artifacts dumped in one exact zone. When you logically backtrack from that concentrated pile of debris, the trail points relentlessly and directly toward the residence, sitting just above that rocky runoff. which doesn't definitively prove what went down on February 1st. However, it vividly highlights the exact direction all the tangible proof is marching toward. Reaching 58 days deep into a nightmare lacking any verified incident zone or mapped getaway path, establishing a solid heading becomes incredibly vital. Finally, we need to frame this against the established chronology of that fateful evening. Someone formally called in Nancy's disappearance right at the crack of dawn. A deadly countdown started in the shadows, locked inside an elusive time frame we still cannot pin down exactly. That agonizing gap bridging the final eyewitness account and the early distress ring holds the core secret here. Navigating that dried riverbed under darkness completely changes the game compared to a midday trek. Stripped of neighborhood street lamps, this specific landscape acts as an incredibly thick cloak for anyone wanting to hide. Clear daytime silhouettes, shifting figures, or dropped items simply vanish into the pitch-black voids of a suburban Tucson backyard. A drainage ditch snaking past properties completely dodges municipal lighting, creating absolute urban blindness. Tracking the February 1st timeline along with the actual ravine geography, plus those newly mapped apparel discoveries scattered out there weave together to establish the absolute biggest priority for detectives right now on March 30th, 2026. Tangible proof sits right inside that ravine. Local authorities receive the tip. From here on out, the public surrenders all control. Power now rests solely with an agency whose track record throughout this whole ordeal faces harsh criticism from seasoned experts carrying significantly heavier credentials than my own. The grassroots impact. This whole saga highlights, better than almost any modern mystery, the sheer power wielded by amateur detectives, autonomous video producers, plus an intensely active internet crowd stepping up when formal authorities flat out refuse to deliver solutions fast enough for both society and the crisis. Allow me to explicitly break down exactly how these everyday sleuths tackled this investigation. Forget the vague summaries. Dig into the Federal Bureau of Investigation firearms shop, registry details totally unearthed by citizen networks, tracking key targets way before local police even dared to acknowledge the issue aloud. Consider the deep biological splatter breakdowns, especially those hollow center crimson stains located indoors that amateur experts thoroughly dissected long before any formal laboratory summaries hit the press. The precise layout of those marks, their implications regarding speed and impact zones, plus the timeline of the actual wound. These regular folks actively conducted deep scientific reviews, while the regional deputies kept their mouths completely shut. Then someone caught a University of Arizona sports tag hiding in crime scene video, brilliantly flagged by Digital Sleuth at Chi-M, boasting 193,000 posts on Platform X, who felt incredibly certain about her visual match, boldly declaring her findings online while promising to hand the whole file over to the cops. That major breakthrough resulted purely from regular crowdsourcing of open source media. Plus, we cannot ignore the oral flashlight holding habit. Web sleuths flagged that particular contractor quirk as a massive psychological indicator pointing to an experienced laborer possessing deep layout knowledge. Finally, consider the gulch bordering Annie's property, physically scoured under blazing heat and thick weeds by content creator Jim, a man constantly revisiting those exact same bushes because he thoroughly understands how landscapes shift and initial sweeps easily miss crucial clues. 0 of these leads launched from a government briefing. Absolutely 0. Every solitary tip sparked right here among dedicated crowds just observing, breaking down data mapping zones and injecting genuine detective strategies into totally accessible public records. Consequently, each individual revelation pressured the authorities into issuing statements confirming facts or clearing up rumors. That remains a massive achievement. We are witnessing amateur reporting boasting intense dedication and skill that demands respect instead of mockery. Frankly, it brings up a vital issue we need to ponder. How come ordinary crowds continually uncover massive clues while heavily funded government squads fail to share anything useful? Jim's channel embodies this exact dedication perfectly. He actively trekked through dangerous wilderness, while local deputies strictly focused on dodging media questions and saving their own professional reputations. He returned to that dried stream simply because the raw numbers screamed it held hidden secrets. He proved completely accurate. However, wondering if the cops actually respect his discoveries remains an unsolved mystery. The digital crowd offers an unwavering response. We promise to continuously observe, hunt for clues, and broadcast the truth regardless of police action or inaction. Regarding the family dynamic, Savannah Guthrie stepped up immediately as the primary spokesperson, hunting for her missing mom right from the start. Working as a leading Today Show host, she ranks among the most famous reporters across all national broadcast networks. Giving her unprecedented camera access and incredible influence, rarely seen during a standard hunt for a senior citizen, vanished from Tucson, Arizona. She weaponized that spotlight intentionally and tactically, a move retired Federal Bureau of Investigation agent Harry Trombus agreed was completely synced up with detectives to push the case forward. This teamwork reveals a crucial truth. Her media statements regarding the tragedy avoid spontaneous or purely tearful outbursts. Everything she does looks highly tactical. Her interviews push a specific detective agenda. Ultimately, her broadcasted words carry the heavy burden of a daughter hiding way more classified details than she admits. Her sit-down on the Today Show totally shifted the societal perspective on the crime. A few distinct comments completely altered the active manhunt live on air. She mentioned detectives looming directly above her mattress. That gives us a chillingly tangible mental picture rather than a vague concept. Cops analyzing a mattress strongly indicates agents looking for explicit clues tied strictly to the bedroom environment. That fact holds massive weight. It suggests a laser-targeted search inside the actual property walls. Furthermore, it hints that their scrutiny proved vital enough to demand highly specialized tactics inside that exact chamber. She talked about replying to extortion letters, completely validating them instead of tossing them aside. This proves authorities found those threats highly credible. That back-and-forth communication absolutely dictated the initial police strategy, pulling strings behind the scenes while keeping the general public entirely clueless. She painted a picture of relatives surviving a nightmare, lacking neat endings, rigid schedules, or named suspects. They are kin guarding heavily restricted secrets they refuse to leak. This household carefully juggles their television persona against a horrifying hidden truth, a reality that feels increasingly sinister when you factor in the massive pile of clues pulled from that deserted ravine. The exact spot hiding these secrets sits squarely in Annie's backyard. Remember, she's the person who initially dialed authorities to report Nancy missing. Her land sits directly against a dried riverbed that keeps coughing up various garments tied to this massive ongoing search. Police have yet to pin any official guilt on Annie Guthrie. Actually, detectives haven't formally labeled a single individual as the culprit so far. Nobody's pointing fingers or jumping to wild conclusions without solid proof backing it up. We are strictly letting the physical landscape do the talking. That drainage ditch borders Annie's backyard directly. Critical items turned up right there. These remain undisputed truths. Everyone is currently desperately trying to figure out how Nancy vanished or got transported without triggering any security cameras. That makes the backyard ditch and those recovered garments crucial details we absolutely cannot ignore. Savannah heads back to the Today Show on April 6th. Any statement she makes after processing these fresh updates requires our undivided attention. The public will definitely stay tuned, and my program will break down every single word. Let me inject another level of perspective here, especially since the domestic relationships involved have constantly proven far messier than they initially look. Savannah Guthrie built her career as a highly skilled reporter. She fundamentally gets how narratives spread. She knows exactly how viewers digest news, grasping precisely which details to reveal or strategically hold back. Every single public statement she makes regarding this ordeal feels meticulously planned rather than random. The specific details she selectively broadcasts versus what she buries create their own unique trail of breadcrumbs. That dried riverbed borders Annie's property directly. Annie is actually Savannah's relative. The absolute truth about what actually happened to Nancy Guthrie on the evening of February 1st, 2026, remains hidden somewhere between Savannah's carefully crafted public statements and the tangible clues dragged out of that residential drainage ditch. We might lack the full story right now, but we are inching incredibly close to its physical origin point. It is finally time to reveal the massive secret I teased earlier. I promised during the intro that we would circle back to a crucial detail capable of completely shifting our entire perspective on this mystery. I was absolutely dead serious about that claim, so behold. For 58 days starting the exact morning Nancy Guthrie vanished, the defining issue hasn't been her current whereabouts. The main focus isn't even about pointing fingers at the guilty party. The most baffling riddle, which constantly shatters working theories, completely exhausts armchair detectives, and completely freezes police progress, comes down to one single thing. What method proves a person's ultimate fate, lacking a corpse missing a definitive attack site, and possessing absolutely zero confirmed tracking data regarding their travel path? Murder trials without a corpse heavily rely on tangible proof, a fact industry professionals continuously emphasize regarding this mystery and similar tragedies. Hard clues usually make or break these battles. Forget tearful admissions or unreliable bystanders. Success requires tangible items tracking a suspect's path, linking specific locations to the target while surviving brutal laboratory testing and courtroom battles. We are talking about discarded garments, stray threads or microscopic traces pulled from a sandy trench by dedicated civilian volunteers who patiently retrace pathways that official deputies completely overlooked during their sweeps. Authorities were likely hunting for larger clues, seeking glaringly obvious signs, or perhaps barely paying attention whatsoever when searching the property directly behind Annie Guthrie's residence. Let me emphasize that nobody knows if cops secured those garments yet, but imagine if lab analysis ultimately links those exact fabrics to the evening of February 1st. If those 2026 findings tie back to Nancy Guthrie, or any suspect, that mundane backyard trench instantly transforms into something profoundly significant. It evolves into an active crime scene, We finally gain a legitimate, scientifically backed focal point for an investigation desperately lacking one. It serves as tangible proof detailing exactly how the victim traveled or was relocated. It provides a definitive travel path, highlights potential dumping methods, and permanently anchors the entire physical narrative within a residential ditch, virtually forcing local detectives to finally execute a highly rigorous, uncompromisingly thorough, and completely undeniable follow-up investigation. Following 58 agonizing days amidst heavy leadership controversies, beyond a former United States Surgeon General declaring the initial area hopelessly compromised, and after countless wildly promising tips, fizzled out into frustrating delays. An independent content creator wielding a recording device revisited that dried riverbed and successfully uncovered additional garments in that exact identical spot. The local sheriff received an official heads up. Now everybody patiently observes exactly how the chief handles this massive breakthrough. Our dedicated audience and my platform refuse to look away until justice prevails. Please fully absorb the absolute core message I am presenting before you click away from my presentation today. Forget wild speculation or definitive endings. Embrace the underlying structure. That ditch represents ground zero, while those discovered items flash a gigantic warning sign. Alerting the police remains an undeniable reality. Whatever the authorities decide to do moving forward tests not merely this particular manhunt, but the fundamental integrity of their entire department. Should the Pima County Sheriff's Department gather these artifacts, test them thoroughly, and broadcast their findings with absolute honesty, we will finally witness genuine public accountability in action. However, if those clues remain ignored and unanalyzed, the citizen sleuths doing the heavy lifting will receive a loud, depressing message regarding police incompetence, generating a completely different type of proof. Reaching day 58 teaches us incredibly brutal lessons about how blind optimism drastically differs from quiet endurance. Our network refuses to stay quiet or sit idle while observing every media briefing and scanning every sandy trench. Since police received the alert, we eagerly await their forthcoming response. Nancy Guthrie tragically remains entirely unaccounted for. That heartbreaking reality passionately drives this channel, fueling exactly what our dedicated supporters constructed across 58 grueling days, while continuously pushing civilian heroes like Jim into scorching Tucson ravines when ignoring the tragedy feels significantly easier for everyone. Anyone tracking this mystery deeply understands that most massive breakthroughs never originated from standard police bulletins or formal bureaucratic announcements delivered by the local precinct. Federal agents aren't helping either. Ordinary citizens relentlessly scrubbing through surveillance footage deserve the real credit. Everyday folks constantly submit leads, travel for miles just to hike those sandy trenches, and endlessly spam reporters on social media past midnight begging someone to analyze their discoveries. They scream about how crucial these clues are. This passionate crowd has operated exactly like this since February 1st, constantly moving the needle forward. Jim perfectly embodies that relentless spirit. His incredible discovery out in the dirt on March 28th, meticulously filmed, submitted to cops, and uploaded for public viewing, beautifully honors our grassroots investigative heritage. This represents top-tier civilian sleuthing, matching the crisis perfectly demanding total respect from the alerted authorities. Ask yourself if you truly value independent investigators alongside our community network. Show your support by smashing the like button. If you believe civilian heroes deserve massive praise for repeatedly outperforming useless official channels during this tragedy, and countless others. Beating the algorithm is crucial for getting this vital evidence to the right sets of eyes. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. We track every single update instantly. Forget waiting for a convenient evening news cycle. We drop updates the second they happen, and today is absolutely critical. Sound off in the comments section below. Break down exactly what catches your eye in those pictures. I need your theories on those strange wash patterns. Give me your predictions on the local sheriff's next move compared to what they actually should execute. Our viewer family uncovers hidden clues and forces authorities to answer for their failures. Do not underestimate our collective power. This ongoing investigation proves our impact time after time. Our eyes remain wide open. Our crucial updates will never stop. Nancy Guthrie will never fade away. This presentation exists solely to educate and inform viewers. Every detail shared here stems from strictly open source intelligence, featuring archived online discussions, verified press broadcasts alongside completely official testimonies provided by legitimate and recognized public authorities. These facts remain completely true at the time of filming. Absolutely nobody has been officially accused or secretly hinted at regarding the missing status of Nancy Guthrie. Any rumor stemming from unofficial neighborhood chatter gets strictly marked as purely speculative during this entire broadcast. Our platform operates entirely independent from the Guthrie relatives, the local Pima County deputies, the federal agents, or absolutely any other official policing organization. Anyone holding vital clues about missing Nancy Guthrie must immediately dial the Pima County Anonymous Tip Hotline or reach out to the Tucson Federal Bureau headquarters. From this story, the deepest lesson is that truth often survives in silence, waiting for brave hearts to uncover it. Sometimes the people who make the biggest difference are not the most powerful ones, but the ones who refuse to look away. One determined person, guided by compassion and persistence, can awaken an entire community. This reminds us that justice is not only the duty of institutions, it is also a moral responsibility shared by ordinary citizens. When people stay alert, speak up, and care about the suffering of others, they become a light in dark places. Courage does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like returning again and again, searching carefully, and refusing to ignore what others have missed. The story also teaches us to respect every small detail in life. A tiny clue, a quiet voice, or one act of responsibility can change everything. We should never underestimate the power of persistence, integrity, and public compassion. In the end, a healthy society is built not only on law, but on conscience. When people choose truth over comfort and action over silence, hope remains alive. And where hope remains, justice still has a chance to rise.